Live, local. This is Fox 12 Now.
Everyone, this is Fox 12 Now. I'm Greg Nibbler. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate you being here, part of the show. Just wanted to pull that up. That is a live look of downtown Portland from our Shriners cam, and it's a little gloomy outside, but go to kptv.com. You can stay updated on all of that. Again, we are live streaming here out of the newsroom as we do every weekday. We cover a wide range of topics. Right now, we are talking about cybersecurity, a topic that's really never going to go away, but what should you know for 2025, particularly to keep yourself safe and your own information and small businesses, something that is of concern as well. To talk all about this from Checkpoint, we've got Greg Pepper joining us. And Greg, thanks. Good to have you on here. And, you know, it's good for people to stay up to date and educated on what some of these things are because it's always changing. The people out there who want your information, who want to cause harm, they don't stop. And that's why it's good to know what's happening. So for this year, for 2025, what are some of the biggest things that you're seeing from your research and understanding of what's happening out there?
Well, thanks for having me. And we've seen a lot of continued activity, both in the efforts around ransomware, around account takeover. We have significant increase in targeted attacks, actually specifically directed at schools, universities, governments, potentially healthcare organizations as well, right? These have highly valued pieces of information and access to one another, but are often underprotected compared to some of the other industries which we monitor activity as well.
So looking at those, is it just because they haven't thought about it and don't have maybe the infrastructure in place to combat some of these cybersecurity threats?
They definitely often have less resources from a defense, from an observation, from a remediation. But often there's a unique tie between government and education that a lot of folks within higher education work with government on policy programs or other things of that nature. And there's an interconnected trust between their systems that potentially provide access and exposure between the two of them if I'm able to compromise any one of those individuals.
And then they can once they get the foot in the door, I would imagine then it's just that much easier to bounce around to all the other ones.
Well, that's precisely. We've seen a significant trend where many organizations have very strong perimeter defenses, but to make it easy for employees to do their jobs, have very weak internal security controls. And this is not just within themselves, but as they connect to cloud and software as a service, or maybe they connect to other organizations, the lack of internal detection and remediation mechanisms can lead to a very small compromise, rapidly expanding within an organization.
So when we talk about a compromise, is that something where is somebody infiltrating the system from the outside, or is it something as simple as an employee clicking on a bad link and entering in their password where they shouldn't, or something like that?
Well, uniquely can happen in a variety of ways, and though email still continues to be one of the top attack vectors in which people are sending attachments to the end user, users no longer have to open the attachments to potentially be compromised. A lot of these embedded HTML emails, once they execute on my phone, in my web browser, on my email program, potentially have the opportunity to load software on the computer. And unlike the days of the past where we open a file and then see an immediate response of infection and compromise, a lot of times now these things hide and will manifest themselves at a future date when they want to be invoked by these threat actors.
Is that as simple as just opening up the email, or do you still have to click on a link of some kind or a document?
Well, it depends upon the software and the vulnerabilities within those applications, but it is possible just by opening and reading an email that you're executing the embedded content within that email itself, even if you're not clicking on subsequent links and attachments.
What are the steps that people can do to try to protect themselves from that?
Well, first and foremost, any device that you're using, whether it's my Windows or my Apple device, I'm on a phone or a tablet, hopefully there's some type of security controls that are added to the native functionality that's included within, right? If I'm an enterprise organization, I might bring additional security software from vendors like Checkpoint or others out there to provide advanced preventative capabilities on their laptops, tablets, mobile devices as well.
And, talking about that for organizations, for an enterprise, looking at, there's obviously the concern for people with their own personal devices and information and things they should follow. But when we're talking about small businesses, what are some of the main steps that they can do to help protect themselves from some of those issues that we've seen where somebody gets compromised, employee clicks on a link, their data is vulnerable, all of that?
Well, one of the unique things we've seen over the last few years is not just targeting people's laptops, desktops, and cell phones. We're targeting some of these small office routers, IP cameras, streaming media devices that maybe we're plugging into our home or small business offices. So ensuring that, one, we're updating the firmware regularly when available. Two, we're not using the default passwords that came on my Soho router as an example, because by compromising these edge devices that my business, my doctor's office, my law office is now connecting to the internet, gives the hackers access to a tremendous amount of information as they're between those users and the internet itself. So I think maintaining good hygiene, not just on my Windows, Mac, Android, and iOS devices, but realize that many of us have dozens of other interconnected IoT devices now in the network, that if we're not maintaining their health and hygiene as well, could become points of entries for these hackers and malicious actors.
When you talk about that, the interconnected Internet of Things devices that we all have, whether maybe it's a doorbell or a light or, I mean, everything, quite honestly, there's so many things that can be connected into a network now. In order to protect yourself from that, is it something where you should constantly look for firmware updates yourself or set a schedule just in case they don't automatically update?
Yeah, I mean, many of these devices can be set to auto update, although attackers, interestingly enough, have used that to infect the software supply chain, allowing these auto update devices, if we get into their software update mechanisms, to automatically propagate my malware throughout the world. That being the case, I think for the average prosumer, having auto updates in these devices is a good recommended, but also monitoring activity to some extent. If all of a sudden we see a significant amount of activity or bandwidth coming from devices like a camera that maybe shouldn't be sending this type of information, these are the things that from a red flag raise our awareness and maybe then require some type of a response.
Every year and even throughout the year when it comes to cybersecurity, there are new names or acronyms or stuff that comes out understanding different kinds of threats. And for this year, what do you think is something that people should know or get familiar with as far as a term for cybersecurity in 2025?
Yeah, well, I mean, we've definitely heard a lot about ransomware over the last couple of years, where some type of infection now causes some type of commercial extortion effort. We've also seen a tremendous increase in something called info stealers. And info stealers are software that's designed to steal people's passwords such that the hackers can then use this type of information to gain access to accounts, legitimate email, maybe through business email compromise. They can send fake emails, but from a legitimate source and sender. We've seen numerous financial fraud where compromised email accounts sent to the appropriate business leaders cause wire transfers and other transfer of funds that are, fraudulent in nature.
So definitely learn that term and understand that term, or at least to be aware of it. Another one, I think you kind of referenced this, but just to give it a name, edge device exploitation. So when we're talking about edge device exploitation, we're talking about attacks against some of those devices we have connected to our network now, i.e. doorbells or lights or whatever it may be.
Yeah, I mean, those are sometimes behind that edge home router device, or I bought a firewall from Best Buy or Costco to act as my Wi-Fi and my edge security devices. But those edge are directly connected to the internet. And we even have edge devices on us 24/7 with our mobile devices now, as they're connected on 5G or they're on Wi-Fi as well. But these IoT devices that are also now plugged directly into the internet represent an increased level of exposure, as they lack a lot of the security controls and capabilities that we can add to other traditional computing devices.
Well, for this year, for everybody watching who's at home and now terrified of everything that's out there, but I mean, it is constantly evolving. That's why it's good to know. What would you say is the top thing they should be thinking about going into 2025 to make sure that they protect themselves from all of these bad actors and cybersecurity threats?
I mean, we're very dependent upon passwords for a lot of our access to applications. So I think maintaining good password hygiene in terms of use of strong passwords, not potentially using key passwords for banking or other sensitive information in other potentially public arenas, as an example. Getting some type of two-factor notification, such that if someone's both logging into my Microsoft or my Google account or logging into my bank, as an example, that I receive some type of secondary notification. And I think lastly, and I alluded to this in the beginning, just maintaining good software hygiene around all of these devices that we have connected to our networks, whether it's our light bulbs or our cameras or our streaming devices or our kids switching Nintendo consoles upstairs.
Well, Greg, thank you very much for joining us, and it's important to stay up to date on everything that's happening out there for everyone, whether you're your own stuff, whether you're a small business, whether you're a giant corporation, government, hospital, whatever it may be. These people out there who want to get your information, they're never going to stop, and they're constantly evolving. We have to evolve as well and understand some of those threats. And thank you for helping to educate everyone a little bit more about what's going on out there.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Greg. Have a good day.
You too. And for everybody out there, this is Fox 12 Now. So we do what? Let me see there. We do a live stream here out of the newsroom. There is an example of that. So again, we appreciate you joining us. If you're watching afterward, you can find us on our YouTube channel at kptv.com or the Fox 12 Oregon apps. All great places to share these segments. You can leave comments on YouTube, all of that. Feel free to send me an email, fox12now@kptv.com. But I will talk to you soon. I'm Greg Nibbler. This is